what is coming after us here with the agricultural sector also. How could you develop the agricultural sector both to feed the people of Ghana and to deliver a big part of the fuel need in Ghana? I think it's possible, and it's something really that I would encourage to look into. When it comes to the vehicle manufacturing itself, again, from a truck perspective, from a bus perspective, what a company like Scania do, like Mercedes, MAN, or any other company for that sake also, is the chassis. And on the chassis you put a specialized bodywork to do what you need to do. That could be a platform, it could be a refuse collector, it could be a tipper body, and that part of a product could be anything from 20% of the value to 80% of the value of a vehicle, depending on how sophisticated it is and what it's going to be used for. But these equipments are made in smaller series. This equipment includes more labor to manufacture, so it will create more jobs. The added value is quite high. So that's where I would start. We already tested actually in Ghana. We made tipper bodies here in Ghana together with a company we worked together with. We also made bus bodies together with Neoplan. The factory still exists, and we've done 2 prototypes. So it's possible, and it creates quite a lot of inputs in Ghana. So that's...
Thanks, Frederick.
Thank
I
you.
would like to bring in Thomas first, and then Eve from Johannesburg. What types of activities do you realistically see in Ghana, and what kind of progression should Ghana pursue?
In the passenger car and light commercial vehicle space, everything is about volume. Okay, so when you look at what we do in South Africa, Volkswagen just close to 200,000 cars per year. We battle to localize parts above the 50% value. So we even working on it for many years and with a strong supplier base. So you battle with that kind of volume. You need more volume. You need to, as an industry, at least look at 1.5 million, 2 million cars production to have sustainable suppliers for the future. Now, you can do that in 3 different ways. First, you can produce in your country and hope that you can export it someplace else. Like the typical one, you do cable harnesses in Egypt and you try to sell them everywhere else but in Egypt. That's not sustainable, especially when you look at the world, how it's developing at the moment with America and Brexit and Europe going a different way in kind of type of vehicles. Or second one, aftermarket. You find yourself stuff that is needed anyhow. It doesn't matter for local production, like the tires, the spark plugs and oil and so on. But it's also not really bringing the value. What I believe needs to be done is to think bigger. And that talks to that regional integration very strongly. What we need to do is not fight a case for Ghana and fight a case for Nigeria and everybody tries to do everything. Why don't we do something African? Why don't we use what we have in South Africa, which is, by the way, also too small. We use Ghana, we use on the East Coast, we use Kenya, and we build a Pan-African auto concept. You make the pie bigger so that everybody's share in it is so big that everybody can live. Now, why don't we build, in South Africa, for example, we build small cars, Polos, Vivos, and pickups predominantly. Why doesn't Ghana build SUVs or sedans? No? Then the East Coast could do something else. But then each operation by itself would be sustainable. Incentives are great to kickstart something. But if it's not sustainable, people will lose interest, especially government will lose interest when the money gets tight. So you want to make it sustainable, and sustainability comes with volume. So we've been trying to promote this also with the African Automotive Industry Association to reach out and say, come on, let's do something African instead of hoping always for America or UK or whatever. We have so much opportunity in Africa. If we play that right, we can do something African. And it's not South Africa doing something in Africa. It's about Ghana doing something, Kenya doing something, and South Africa doing something. So everybody wins.
Thank you, Thomas. The Pan-African auto concept is definitely an interesting one. Eve, I would like to bring you in now.
Thank you, Hassan. I think I would like to start that we can acknowledging and maybe enforcing what the approach from Thomas, which is really the approach we have decided to embrace in the Automotive Association Association, African Automotive Association Industry, and the AAAM. So on top of that, what I would like to touch base on is the related topic to the supply chains with respect to spare part and component availability. So we talk a lot, if you talk about automotive industry, about used car, which is one of the bottleneck. But we don't talk often about used component on fake component. And the challenge is as much as important for the OEM, the used vehicle, as the used component or fake component for the supplier. So, and now we are back again to the topics of homologation, standardization, and how do you address that? So through putting in place the right homologation for every vehicle entering the country in Ghana or in Nigeria, on all those, help you to steer those topics. Same as the release of the part, the fake part. They are coming from countries, right? They are coming from China and other country in the world. But they are also entering the country through the border, through the harbor. So they need to be put in place. Those instruments will help to steer and to give a chance to the one who is willing to locally produce, for instance, the battery, as mentioned by the minister, have a real chance on the market. So, and this can be also take one step further. This means once I have a certain supplier producing locally, I need also to provide them the environment. This means incentive, not only for them, but also for the OEM, which are willing to purchase those battery locally. That makes sense for them at the end of the day, because it is a business decision. So I think that this is really one keystone that need to be looked into if you talk about supply chain development. This means how do we put the instrument in place to regulate, to approach this topic of used part. I mean, I have been in Ghana, in Accra on the market, and you will see people, they are not able to, because they are not able to realize what's the difference between an original one and a fake part, they decide to go for the used part, right? So, and this is not something we can further entertain, yeah? So that is the point I wanted to make. And of course, this is linked to the training and also the awareness of the population or the roadside mechanics. We need to train them how to differentiate between genuine or a fake part, and also to bring back the topic of total cost of ownership. This was mentioned by the colleague from Scania. If I do purchase a used car and I spend over the rest of the life car more money in service, in fuel than the purchase, and if I purchase a new car, I spend less. At the end of the day, I spend more money. So we need to bring all those, I would say, ingredients together to provide the right training to roadside mechanic, to the right tooling, but also to regulate the market somehow. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to turn back to Berlin to Stefan. Stefan, we've heard a lot of very interesting points there. How can the German African Business Association help its members in Germany to facilitate this process of transferring more activities into the automotive value chain here in Ghana? Stefan.
Thank you, Hassan. That's a real easy one, to be honest. I think there's mainly three areas where we can do something and where we can do more, in fact. First is most of the members of that sector are member in my organization. So I think the first role is to inform them of what's going on in various countries, where to move, where to follow the OEMs. I mean, Thomas Schäfer doesn't need information from us, but a lot of the suppliers is what we call Mittelstand. Mittelstand, we've heard this morning, is very conservative, sometimes very conservative, family-owned businesses, world market leaders in a special niche, but they wouldn't necessarily look to Africa by themselves and not necessarily have all the African countries on their radar screen. So pointing them to opportunities that they might otherwise be missing and always be up to date on developments, I think, is one thing that classically a business association would do. Second is we need to work with our friends in Africa and with African governments on behalf of our members
in making sure we have the necessary reform in place at a speed that makes sense to potential investors so that they don't lose interest, because I think that's something we have in common. We want this to happen, and we want it to happen very soon. We work, the ambassador here is there, Excellency. We work with governments all over the place, and now that I more and more understand about the Pan-African automotive industry concept, you need a Pan-African industry association to work with all of these governments in parallel. And the third thing is not to be underestimated. I mentioned it's going to be Mittelstand that will follow the big OEMs. While the OEMs can afford going and taking certain risk, Mittelstand, family-owned specialized businesses are not necessarily going to do that. They will be looking for export credit cover, they will be looking for investment guarantees, for all sort of financing instruments, and making sure they don't lose money if something goes wrong. And I think that is something the German government needs to help with. And that is the context also of the G20 initiative that is on the title of this conference today. So we need to work with the German government also to get the right framework and the right hand-holding so that German family businesses can move together with the OEMs.
Thank you, Stefan. Honorable Minister, I'm back.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I on board? Yes.
I think what role, we've heard a lot of different things here in terms of, let's not only focus on Ghana. Let's think about a broader platform, the Pan-African platform, the regional integration idea.
Yes.
We've heard about some of the activities that make more sense for Ghana, especially at this early stage, which might not necessarily be attracting tier one suppliers today, for example. What role can your ministry play to facilitate some of these ideas that have been discussed today?
Wonderful. So let me talk to you about the value chain, the cocoa value chain. I think if I went to Europe and I talked to people about getting cocoa from Ghana, nobody would bat an eyelid, would they? It wouldn't be a discussion about value chain because it's clear that's where it comes from. We've inherited a system where the mindset is that raw materials comes from Africa and you send finished goods to Africa. That is part of what we need to change. We need to change this perception. We need to change this concept, which has driven a lot of our industrial base for decades in the past. And that is at the start of the discussion. And that talks about Ghanaian, West African people wanting to move to a different direction. A Ghana beyond aid, an industrial base. And I think that's where it starts off. Because without that dialogue, that conception still is sitting in people's mindset. So when you talk about Africa, forget it. When you talk about Ghana, yes, if I'm buying cocoa, I'm buying oil palm maybe, but I don't think about going there to make cars. And that is the whole concept of changing that dialogue. Because that value chain is clear. Nobody would ask you about that. Nobody asks you the value chain of the bauxite. You know that the bauxite comes there to make aluminium and the other way. So I think that's the key. But what can we do to support that? In terms of regional wide, and I gave that example. We have ECOWAS. As you said, I'm a little less numbers than you, but I guess our big brother, 450 million people. What if we made the batteries in Ghana, some of the chassis in Nigeria, something else in Cote d'Ivoire, and we assembled in Liberia? These are business opportunities that are there. So before even I think about Kenya, I think about the 450 million, and maybe develop that, and that can be part of the plan because the economic community is there. It links in very clearly then to the fake composite. Our Standards Authority recently, with the support of GUTA, tested a whole series of second-hand products, and the vast majority of them failed. Now, of course, nobody wants that, but we need to manufacture it. We need to have a source that we are clear, and that is why we want the manufacture of machine parts and equipment here, so that if we put policy in place to stop that, we have an alternative. If we cut off the tap and there's no alternative, our vehicles cannot come to a standstill. We don't want to do that. I want to also talk about the reform at the speed, so not lose interest. I think the point made earlier. Absolutely. I think you will find us extremely proactive and extremely key. Suppliers, I forgot the second term, Mittelstand.
Sorry.
That's okay. We know that is absolutely crucial because you have a well-established value chain. You know them. You've worked with them. And part of our strategy is to sit with them and change that mindset. Look for opportunities for partnership with Ghanaian businesses. We talked recently, George from Swami came a little earlier to talk about what can be done. We talked to the German government. I have had a number of discussions, for His Excellency here, about the export guarantee system coming through so that we reduce the barrier for taking that step. Government Ghana has to do its part, the German government, because if we don't do that, then the fear factor will come through. Let us do it for 4 or 5. Let's show successes. Both governments can sit back and the private sector will just get on with it. They will not need us to do anything. Frankly, they'll tell us to get out of the way so they can just continue building their businesses. But at the beginning, this is where we must be the most proactive. So that group is key. And I know our ambassador there will be talking to them. Yofi, I know, we're talking to them. We talk to them. And we would ask Volkswagen and Scania, give us a list. We'll be very happy to go talk to all of them so that we can look at how we can partner, offer opportunities. So if you've got somebody engaged in that. As I'm trying to think areas that questions were asked that I need to. We talk about fuel. This is a key area. Should we be looking at, I know my good friend Supri is there. I have talked to him. Should we even be talking about fossil fuel? Should we go straight to electric? Should technology not allow us to take a leap? Why replicate something why start something we know is dying? So I think this is where the opportunity, again, technology today gives us a very different base. 30 years ago, when he did this kind of analysis, the discussion was very different. Was fossil or go or bust? And we are now in a very different. So I think this is an area that becomes important. Maintenance. Maintenance. I don't know how many of us here who haven't traveled in from Germany with the parts in our luggage. We've all done it. I don't even want to start that, though. We have all done it. It is a nightmare because you cannot get the parts. We know this, and we know this is an important element. And when you get here and they ask you, what is that? They don't even ask the question because they know you bring in a... Anyway, let me not go there. But I think it's an important factor of what we're doing. Chassis body, the idea you mentioned the value chain. And it's important. We cannot eat this thing, if I call it, it's like putting a 5-course meal in front of you and you want to eat all at once. You're going to get indigestion. No, you start with the first course, but you know exactly what the meal is because it's in front of you. You know where you want to get to, and let's be very clear in our intervention. But I repeat, this government is absolutely focused on doing what is necessary. But I say smart, not smart as an intelligent, but specific, measurable, etc. That is what we're looking at doing. Having a robust debate and ensuring that we do what we need to do to make it happen.
Thank you, Honorable. So we're coming to the end of this session. I think we have about 5 minutes, and I'm just going to keep it exciting for the last 5 minutes. Frederick, I want each of you to make one big prediction for where you see the West African automotive market in the next 5-10 years. Frederick, 1 minute.
Well, since I'm a born optimist, I would say I would like to see the auto market in Ghana being modern, jumping over certain development steps. Like the minister said, it's a possibility. Modern vehicles in a well-regulated, efficient transport system that supports the industry of Ghana. Because without the transport system, the tomatoes grown in Kumasi or the automotive batteries manufactured in Tamale will not reach their consumers. So we need an efficient transport system, and we need a whole series of things to support that. Vehicles is one thing, be they imported, be they manufactured here, depending on if a business case hold. We need fuel or electricity. The electricity has to come from somewhere also. Akosombo Dam is good, but it won't be big enough if all Ghana vehicles would run on electricity. So we need to fuel the vehicle park, and we need to continue to develop the after-sales services so that you don't need to smuggle in your parts from Germany, risking to be caught at the airport. No one likes that, and it costs a lot of money. It drives, it takes away the efficiency of the transport sector, and it's very bad. So we need good services. And that was many things. So I'm bad at answering.
Thank you.
In an easy way. Thank you.
Now like to go to Johannesburg, Eve.
Eve,
Yeah. Thank you, Hassan. I think that what has been said is. We will agree for that from the supplier side. We can act right now, and we are acting. We are on the ground. We are talking about having almost 10 Bosch car service in Ghana by end of next year, right? We have one of the most powerful, I will say, aftermarket network as a big supplier, and this will address the topic of part needs. We are actively working on vocational and technical training to help the roadside mechanic to understand the dynamic with the new vehicle, and also talking about new technology, leapfrogging, to bring them up to at the state-of-the-art technology. And this is a joint effort with Scania, with partner, and our with government. So I am very positive about the picture in the next 5 to 10 years. Of course, this needs a lot of willingness. But I have no doubt that the willingness is there, from the public as well as from the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Yves. Thomas?
I would just wish that everybody had the willingness of Ghana. And I commend the Deputy Minister for what he said. He's like, it's like a home run. But I would just say the one thing. When you look at what we're experiencing at the moment in Rwanda, where the most unlikely country you ever could think of, and how this country leapfrogs development in terms of modern mobility. And it's not always about the classic business cases and the classic manufacturing. If Ghana could pick up on that, and we are busy working with the government of Ghana on that mobility idea as well, and to multiply this into what we think it could be in the context of West Africa, then we're talking about a very short term, at least 2 million car production in West Africa, which would be phenomenal and sustainable. So I'm very hopeful with the drive that Ghana and the Ghanaian government is showing. I'm very hopeful that we can multiply the effects that the experience that we have gathered on the East Coast so far, and multiply it on the West Coast. So very happy.
Thank you, Thomas. Stefan?
My countdown here says I have 0 seconds left to speak, so let me make use of that most efficiently. I don't know where Ghana's automotive industry is going to be in 5 years, but I believe Africa's automotive industry in 30 or 40 years is where China's is today, with a lot of contribution from Germany. We need 20 million jobs on the continent every year just to cover for population growth. So to be honest, we don't have a choice. We just need to go and get it done. What share goes to what country is very much in the hands of our African friends.
Thank you, Stefan. And an honorable minister, I'll give you the final word for this panel.
Thank you very, very much for that. Sorry, I took my microphone off. Let me put that back on again. I want to take the opportunity. Oh, are we gone? I can hear music. Oh, okay. You want to have lunch? Okay.
We want you to dance over there.
I know I'm not Chancellor Wainwright. Let me not go there. I really want to thank everybody for their contributions. I really want to reiterate, it's a journey, it's a partnership, and we are fully ready to play our part. I look forward to working together as we move on. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining the panel. Thank
you. We can now reward you with some tea or coffee in the room where we had breakfast. And if anybody wants to know where the washrooms are, they're located at the end of the corridor off the catering area. We will meet back here at 11:45, please, to start the agriculture session. 11:45. Let's meet here at 11:40. Please be seated at 11:40.
The session is good. The only the time, but there's not yet. It has to
I'm not, so now I can't speak, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now a break of about 45 minutes, and I would like to invite you for lunch.